Okay, so testing the new bearing support. Oh yes, that's working great. Hello Internet, I'm Guy. This is the Stirling engine that I'm slowly converting from the silver, aluminum, stainless look to a steampunk version. So in the first episode of this series, I made a wood base, and I also made this pulley. The pulley was mounted up here. And then in the second episode, I made this flywheel, which has the pinions for the camshafts here. So you can see when you pull these back and forth, this works like that. It's a reciprocating Stirling engine. Today's episode, I'm going to replace this. So this is the bearing support, and I don't like the way it was designed. So what I want to do is I'm going to make a tombstone-style design out of half-inch aluminum solid plate, and bolt it in from the bottom instead of from the top. These bolts go in and they're threaded into the top. So I have a wood base. I can actually bring the screws in from the bottom and hide them in the bottom. So I'm going to get a chunk of half-inch brass and start in. So stay with me.
I've rough cut a piece of brass and I'm just going to chuck it up in the mill here and tighten the vise. Run it through the end mill, just take off the ends a little bit just to get them down to a good dimension. There is no important dimension here, it's just about finishing the edges nicely. So I get one side done, flip it over, do the other side. I'm enjoying using the new carbide cutter that I have here. This is a really good sharp cutter. I like using my power drill to open up the vise when needed. When it needs a long movement, I'll just chuck in a nut driver. And notice now I'm using these little clamps to hold the parallels in so they don't fall over when I'm setting things up. I really like that. I did an earlier video about how to make those. You can buy them too, but I made them. Get that down nice and tight. Now I want to do center finding here to find the center point where the bearing goes through this block. So I'm finding the edges first. Now I've found both edges. I can use the DRO half measurement to find the center line. And I'm going to go out to the edge and find this edge, and then use that half dimension to find the center for the radius of the half circle that I'm going to draw at the top to make the tombstone shape here. So there I am at center. I'm going to start with just a small center drill as a reference so that I can use my compass to draw the radius that I need for the tombstone. Mark it out a little bit with a blue magic marker just so I know where I'm going to be going making that cut. And using a compass, I'm actually using the pencil lead in the hole because it kind of fits fairly nicely there. Mark out my radius, and then I went over to the bandsaw off camera and cut off most of the waste material. Now I can bore out the hole for the bearings. So yeah, that's going fairly well. I started with a 1/4 inch hole because I need a 1/4 inch hole. I've threaded my circular table here for a 1/4 inch, a 1/4 by 20 bolt, and notice I had a rubber washer underneath and a nice shiny washer on the top here, and I can bolt that down really tightly onto my rotary table. It's high enough now, of course, so the end mill won't cut into the table. That was the reason for the washers at the bottom there. Once again, back to my favorite end mill and cranking around to clean up that radius. I had a little bit of chatter there, and I realized that I could have snugged down the brass knob on the left, the locking knob, or I could just kind of grab a hold of it and resist the urge of the metal there to kind of wiggle around a little bit. So in my final pass, as you'll see in a moment here, I'm actually putting hands on to kind of put a lean on the movement a little bit so it doesn't chatter. Right there, you can see that. It's a pretty nice finish, isn't it? So taking this off again, we're going to go back to the regular mill vise. It's looking good. So now I have to find center again, easing in. Ooh, that's way off center, isn't it? And just sneak up on center. That looks good. Okay, first drill bit. I'm going to go up in drills. I've got quite a few drill sizes to go up because, oh, whoa. It's lucky I have a belt drive. Yeah, that's not good. It's a really sharp drill bit, and I've learned since that you shouldn't really use super sharp drill bits, but here I go learning that lesson all over again. Yes, coming up. Ooh, ouch. So again, you're hearing the sound of my belt drive squealing, and now I've switched to an old drill bit, an old tired Dell drill bit. And that's something I learned from Quinn over at Blondie Hacks, to use a Dell drill bit in brass so it won't catch. I could also regrind the tip of the bit for a 0 angle, but I haven't got around to that. So there we go. This is the final pass, again with dull old drill bits. I have a cheap Chinese set that I keep around for this kind of thing now. So that was just a partial depth of cut so that I could just check and see if the bearing's going to fit properly. The drill bit's a little bit in the way, but I can pull it out of the way just enough to see that, yeah, it's not quite there. So I did drill that all the way through, and now I'm going to chamfer it. Just cleaning up the edges. So now this is a trick with a wood dowel with a slot that I cut in it. It's up in the drill vise, the drill chuck. And if I spin that up, I can use 440 sandpaper to just open up that hole just enough so that the bearing will hammer in there just fine. I'm going to take off maybe, a quarter to half a thou with 440 paper. And yes, it wants to sort of drop in there. So now I'm going to tidy up all the edges on my wide, 6-inch wide by 48-inch belt sander. This is a belt sander I use mostly for woodworking, but with 220 paper, as you can see, it works really well for cleaning up brass and aluminum and even steel. So there are some discontinuities in here between the straight edge and the curve, and I'm just kind of cleaning all that up and giving it that nice brushed, sanded look on the brass finish here. Still see a little line there I'm going to tidy up. There we go, got it. A few more tidy ups. Now I'm just holding it at a 45-degree angle to put a bit of a bevel on there. It would be hard to use a scraper or any other tool to kind of clean that up, so I just did it on the sander. Here I am with the Scotch-Brite. I'm going to clean up all of the edges and take off the bluing, clean up the surface, give it that brushed look again, the vertical brushing. I'm actually fighting the horizontal molding marks, I guess, or extrusion marks on the metal, and so it takes a little bit more work to get that done, but I got through it. So now I'm using my square there to true this up, because I want to drill 2 holes in the bottom, 1 inch apart. So again, I'm center finding. This is obviously the bottom of the tombstone, where I need the 2 holes that will come up through the wood base and hold this down to the wood base. Oopsie, that was a little close. And now I've got those 2 edges, so now I've got my center line identified, and now I'm going to come in on the outer 2 edges and find the outer edges so I can find the center line for that. And there it is, moving over. Got that edge. So now I can move over to the exact center and swap out for and then move over exactly ½ an inch from center for the center drill. I'm going to use an 832 flathead bolt that will go up through the wood and into the brass. And just going to clean that up a little bit, get the second hole. Now I know it's exactly 1 inch over or ½ inch from center on both sides here. Switching to the tap drill, and I'm checking for my depth so I know how far to go down with my DRO, and it's going to need to penetrate into the brass at least a ½ inch. And so I'm just eyeballing the DRO while I'm drilling to give myself at least 0.5, 0.6 inches. And going in with the second one here. And I have my tap guide up in the head of the mill and guiding that in perfectly vertically. This again is an 832 tap. I really enjoy tapping brass.
Okay, so now I have my new tombstone support for the bearings installed, and it looks like the mechanism is going to work just fine. I lit the flame a little while ago. These are all the parts that I replaced. In episode 1 I replaced the pulley, and episode 2 I replaced the flywheel, and of course in this episode I replaced the whole bearing support, which I found really ugly. I think this is much more aesthetically pleasing, and it is bolted in from the bottom with a flathead screw at this point. So now I should be able to start it, and oh yeah, there she goes. We're edging up on steampunk here. I'm pretty pleased.
If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give me a like, and if you want to see more in this series, go ahead and subscribe, and you'll catch the next one when I release it in about a week. Thanks for watching.